this is attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein, and today we're going to talk about the situations where you must get an LLC or corporation, where operating as a sole proprietorship or partnership, which are the automatic ways of starting a business, are just not a good idea. So when you start a business, the default is a sole proprietorship or partnership. Sole proprietorship if you're one person, a partnership if it's more than one person who's starting this business together. But it may not make sense to stay that way. It may make sense to form a limited liability company or LLC or a corporation. Not for everyone. Some people can just use the default, and you may use the default for a while. So what are the situations where you must have an LLC or corporation? Situation number one is if you have multiple owners. Partnerships are a terrible, terrible idea. And why is that? Because when you have a partnership with two or however many people who are running a business together, every individual person is personally liable for the actions of the other partners in the business, even if they didn't consent to those actions and didn't know about them. So your business partner goes and signs a contract, they go and take on a bunch of debt for the business, they do something, irresponsible, you didn't know about it, you didn't consent to it, you're still personally liable. So that's terrible, and you don't want that. That's why I recommend when multiple people are starting a business, they form usually an LLC, sometimes a corporation, but a lot of times an LLC is the best way to go, because that way it limits the liability you personally have for anything going on in the business. And if anything dramatic like that happens, you aren't personally on the hook. The second situation is if you have outside investors into the business. In a lot of ways, it's the same kind of thing because it's multiple owners, but people tend to think of it differently. So let's say you're starting a business, it's just going to be you working in it, but you have your rich aunt who has a whole bunch of money and is going to invest in your business. She's not going to do anything with the business. Maybe once a year you're going to send her reports, whatever, but she's going to give you $100,000 to start this business. And she part owns it because of that. But she's a passive investor. In that situation, I highly recommend you form an LLC, or in some situations a corporation. It depends on taxes and all kinds of different things. But the idea is if you have an outside investor, you want to have specific rules about what they can do, what they can't do as a passive investor in the business. You don't want them to randomly come over and take control of things. So what that means is you want formalities like an LLC or a corporation. The third situation is if you have employees. Once you have employees, what happens is your business is liable for their actions that they do within the scope of their work, even if you didn't know about it. So if they go do some bizarre thing to one of your clients or customers, your business is liable. If it's a corporation LLC, it's just the business is liable. But if it's a sole proprietorship or partnership, you're personally liable. Generally speaking, if there's other people who can do stuff with your business that could cause harm to your business, you don't want to ever be on the hook for that. So when you have employees, form an LLC or corporation. The fourth situation is if you have a physical location. So if you're signing a lease, if you have customers or clients who come to your physical space, many times it makes sense to be an LLC or corporation because you have a lot more potential liability. Some of that you can get rid of through insurance. You can have liability insurance that can mitigate a lot of that. But there's also liability from the lease, because a lot of times with a commercial lease, you have to sign a lease for a long period of time, for 5 years or more. You might end up having to co-sign it anyway and be personally liable anyway, even if you have a corporation or LLC. But the idea is that if you have a facility, there are a lot more things that can happen. Someone can slip and fall. You can be liable for this lease, even though the business doesn't work. So you want to limit those extra risks by forming an LLC or corporation. The fifth situation is about your particular industry or the services or products you provide. In your industry, is it very litigious? People sue each other all the time for stuff. In your industry, does the service you provide or the products you sell have a potential for a lot of risk? Because people are taking risks by doing it. If someone has a business that's a bungee cord jumping place, I'm going to tell them to form an LLC or corporation, because even though they have everyone sign a release, if someone breaks their neck, that's a huge big issue. And yeah, you can have insurance, which will probably be horribly expensive to cover that, but you definitely want to have an LLC or corporation. So you have to look at your particular industry, see how often lawsuits happen, just by talking to colleagues and things. Look at your particular products or services and the likelihood of someone will be significantly harmed. That means that you need to form an LLC or corporation. The sixth reason you need to form an LLC or corporation is if you're making a lot of money. So once you start having 100 grand in profits each year, you need to do some serious tax planning so you're not paying serious taxes on that. If you form an LLC or corporation, you can do more serious tax planning because you can have it be taxed as an S Corp if you qualify for that, which is a whole nother video's topic. And you can do tax planning where you pay yourself not just in distributions, but you also pay yourself a salary, and then everything's taxed differently depending upon how you pay yourself. And you can also do other kinds of fringe benefits. The short version is you need tax planning at that point, so you need an LLC or corporation. The seventh reason if you're going to be taking on significant loans, debts, liabilities, having an LLC or corporation will shield you personally from that. Sometimes you still have to co-sign it. So if you start a brand new business and you're getting a loan from the Small Business Administration here in the US, you may personally have to co-sign that loan. It depends on how much you take out. So if you take out a loan for $25,000, you may not have to co-sign it. If you take a loan out for 100 grand, you probably will. Because it's a brand new business, it doesn't have a credit rating. But once your LLC or corporation has been around for a while, it will build up a credit rating over time. And at a certain point, it can get its own loans. It will be responsible for all its own debts. You won't have to co-sign anything. And that's the best situation of all because you're not personally on the hook for things if something goes wrong on the business. The final reason is if you plan to sell your business. You may not know if you want to sell your business on day one. You can form an LLC or corporation later along the line. But if you're creating this business to sell, either to outright to a bigger corporation, you may sell it to another business partner who's going to come in and just take it over, maybe someone junior to you in your industry. It needs to be an LLC or corporation to have this run smoothly. You can sell a sole proprietorship business, but you're selling the assets of the business. It's a bit more awkward because they're going to have to open up all the different accounts themselves. But if it's an LLC or corporation, you sell the entire business. They get to keep the EIN, they can keep the accounts, they can keep everything except that you're just not the owner. It's just like selling stock of a business. There are certain things that could be issues if you had to co-sign stuff, but besides that, you're selling this entire package. And it's a much better deal. You're going to get a much better price for your business if it's an LLC or corporation. Again, this is Attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein. If you have any questions about whether an LLC or corporation is a good fit for you, feel free to ask them below and I'll try to point you in the right direction. Thumbs up if you found this video helpful and subscribe if you like any more videos for small business owners and entrepreneurs. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.